All right, Liberty, thank you so much for that. Okay, so yesterday we do know that the Supreme Court handed down a decision. President Trump, in fact, getting a victory in his battle for border wall funding. The ruling allows the use of $2.5 billion in defense funds to build 100 miles of additional barrier on the southern border.
Here to help us understand the ruling and what it means for the border wall funding fight is Dr. Jason Whitehead. He is an author and associate professor of political science from Cal State Long Beach. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Good morning.
This is kind of a complicated issue. There's a lot of developments here.
Right.
Try to make sense of it for us. Remind us why the Trump administration was trying to use the Defense Department funds in the first place.
Well, there were protracted negotiations with Congress. Remember the government shutdown. The longest government shutdown in U.S. history was precisely over the issue of how much funding Congress was willing to give for the border wall. Congress decided to give some funds, but not all that the president wanted, and so he decided he would use Defense Department funds, declare a national emergency, which he did, and then use Defense Department funds to make up for what he wanted Congress to give him.
So yesterday's ruling, not the final decision,
right,
is what you're saying.
Right.
So what exactly happens right now moving forward?
So what happened was there was a preliminary injunction originally. In other words, the trial court had ordered the wall to stop, the funding to stop flowing for a while. And what the Supreme Court stay did essentially is reverse that injunction. So allows him to use the funds to continue to build the wall during the time that the litigation continues. And it can go for several months until it comes back to the Supreme Court next term. There are also, I think important to note, there are also a number of two other lawsuits that have been filed, one of which could actually go the other way.
So the fight is far from over.
That's true.
But what will happen immediately? What can we expect to see happening now?
Well, there are already contracts, defense contracts that the president entered into to build sections of the wall in California and New Mexico. And I think you can see he has announced his intention to go forward with those contracts and begin building. He wanted to build as soon as July. So I think over the summer you're going to see some things happening. I'm not sure how long it'll take to lay footers and things like that to get the wall started. But one other thing I would note is the other lawsuit by the states. I think there are lawyers all over Sacramento and San Francisco right now scrambling around that are going to ask the court, the same district court that originally issued the injunction in this case, for a stay of for an injunction in their case, which could actually stop, so the wall could begin to be built, and then it could immediately stop with this other litigation. So we'll see what happens with that.
That sounds like it would be expensive for taxpayers, would it not?
It probably would be, yeah. Well, the funds have already been appropriated, so it's a matter of the funds being transferred from one pot into another. So it's not any new funding for taxpayers.
But it's certainly funds that could be used for something else.
That were supposed to be used for military personnel purposes. It's actually, there is some innovation here. Usually when the president diverts military funds, they're operational funds, which obviously the president as commander-in-chief has the authority to allocate. But here we're using personnel funds, which is something that people have been upset about. But yeah, it's ongoing, and I think that the main thing is the ideological split on the court that allowed this to happen, which is something that we get so lost in the weeds of the immediate legal controversy that we forget the larger game being played.
So certainly the ruling has larger implications for the court, for President Trump's legacy.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that, kind of the bigger picture of all this?
Right. Yeah, I think this is really the story, that President Trump has been able to refashion the federal judiciary, appointing hundreds of judges all the way through the judiciary, from 2 Supreme Court justices all the way down to the circuit courts and to the district courts, and filling those positions with conservative appointments. In particular, conservative appointments who are more friendly to executive power. So not just on the border wall, but I think you can see going forward, especially on the Supreme Court, I think we're going to see more and more 5-4 decisions in favor of presidential power when the president exercises his power in a way that Congress doesn't like, in a way that other institutions don't like. You're going to see the president kind of pull the court out of his back pocket. For a president who has spent a lot of time railing against the courts and talking about how these judges are using bad interpretation of law and that they're out to get him, he's actually done a great job behind the scenes to get them on his side.
As they say, elections have consequences,
right,
and we're seeing them right now because of all the judges that have been appointed, right?
That's absolutely right.
All right. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, anytime.
All right. If you're someone who'd like to read more from Dr. Whitehead, check out his brand new book. It's called Judging Judges, Values, and the Rule of Law. It's available from Baylor University Press. Thanks again for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.